All right, it says we're live, so as usual, welcome back to the GM's Dice. Thanks for watching. This is not a While I Drive episode, so you won't have to deal with a shaky camera and bad sound. This is our monthly GM's chat. This is the third one we've done. Tonight we're going to be talking about Force users, Force dice, and some of the rules for Force users in Force and Destiny, and all of Fantasy Flight games so far. It's been a pretty big topic in the Star Wars Tides of Change role-playing game club on Facebook about how the Force and Destiny Force users don't feel like Jedi. Um, to me, they're not really supposed to feel like the Jedi that you see in the prequel movies. A lot of people's problem is, oh, they don't have enough force points or this or that, to where you're constantly fumbling or not being able to do what you're wanting to do. And I just watched Empire Strikes Back again last night with one of my clients, and throughout the majority of that movie, Luke is constantly screwing up his force abilities. He'll start to move something, or he'll start to stack a rock or something, and then it falls over. Fits perfect with what I think was being mentioned in the club. The Jedi that you see in the prequels, most of them are masters. The only one I can think of offhand that's not a master that you see a lot of is Anakin. Now, he's got the skill to be a master, just not the temperament and all that, and he's supposed to be the chosen one. So all these guys, they're all the masters, they're all the big badass Jedis. Force and Destiny, you're not at that level, not for a long time. And the night level play, 150 experience points, I don't think that's meant to be, I'm a knight and I've been a knight for a while. Personally, I think that's like I'm just getting ready to graduate to being a knight, or I've just graduated and been given the title of Jedi Knight. What do you guys think on that subject? We can You can talk random, or we can go down the line. If we go down the line, I'll say we can start with Nathan, then Nelson, Chris, and then Andre.
Okay. So, yeah, I think the way that Fantasy Flight did their force uses was it's rarity. It's like such a minor part of the whole entire game, but it's not something that could be left out. So they touched on it in a way that you know it it can develop if it needs to. That's pretty much my take on it.
All right. Um, I always have tons to say because I ramble and I'm very opinionated. But let me preface everything else that will come along said by myself in this video by saying I think not so much the feeling of Force users comes from a basis of the movies or the prequel movies or any of the sort of cinematic things in Star Wars as much as it does from the previous iterations of the game, like in Star Wars Saga Edition. I think that is coloring a lot of people's opinion when a fifth or sixth level character can reach a use the Force score or use the Force roll of like 30 and get the peak level of any power they know. But as far as the way Fantasy Flight did it, I think personally that they represented Force users as a whole, not just Jedi, but as a whole, better. Because if you watch the movies, right? Personally, 150 points, I don't even think it's a knight. Just if. Maybe if they're desperate to hurry up and get knights, like in the Clone Wars. But I don't even think as a knight. I think 150 additional experience points is a very well-trained Padawan. Because, you know, you're watching the movies and look at the Academy. Padawans are doing lightsaber training, fighting basically blind, using only the Force, learning. They build their first lightsaber with Force Move. If you follow the Force Move chart, to do fine manipulations is quite a bit of an investment. And that's just in that one power. So as far as the actual question, that's the answer. I don't think that the quote-unquote knight level play is actually accurate to being what a Jedi Knight would be.
Yeah, I totally agree on all these points. I think Fantasy Flight games that are perfect, like everybody said, perfect way of representing the time period and what Force users would be. I mean, if everybody who plays this game should be familiar with the A New Hope, Empire, and Return of the Jedi. There were supposed to be no Jedi left. The last of the Jedi were Yoda, Obi-Wan, and that was it. And then when Luke got his training, he was to be the last Jedi. So we're to assume that there are no other Jedi. And we also take the misconception that a Force user is a Jedi. The Jedi are an order. They're not every Force user is a Jedi or every Force user is a Sith. They're orders. So if we remove that stigma of the order and go back to Force user, it's like any other skill that, you know, even a non-Force user would be. It takes time to learn it. You're not going to be the best at what you're going to be right off the bat. You know, just because I'm in tune with the Force, I can automatically take this object and throw it across the room. No, it's going to take practice. It's going to take time and skill ever. So that's kind of my take on it. But like I said, I think they did a great job of representing on how it should go, and I don't think they're overpowered at all, really, quite honestly, at that.
Okay, from my perspective, I think the 150 mark is very low for a knight. I agree, but the only caveat that I would make against that is that there are no more Jedi Knights, and the thematic tone of the game is that a knight would not really be very well equipped with the Force as they would in the Old Republic. So that would probably be the only caveat that I would make, but I agree with what Nelson said and you guys said. I think that the system as a whole works fine. I think it's all encompassing, and I think that it allows I think it complements character development very well. It allows you to play a character very long and build upon, you know, why, and, you know, have reasons for developing specific Force skills as opposed to just jumping right in to having, you know, unlimited power. I think that that those development trees are yeah, exactly. But I think the development trees allow us as players to just kind of go through things at a good pace, complements, you know, how we play in the interval by which, you know, a really good saga could develop. And one thing that I really like about the talent trees also is that they're so easily accessible and so easy to approach that all you got to do is just boost that XP, go through those talent trees, and then you can play, you know, a really high-level knight game and not have to worry about too much because everything is right there. All the information is very compiled in one area. And if you go through various books, you know, we could talk about the brands or whatever, or other games, you know, usually thumbing through 1,000 pages to find what you want. But the trees just put everything right there for you, and you could just nitpick, and if you want to see further details, you just go from there. I mean, that's just from utilizing the book. You know, that was one thing that I thought was nice. But yes, I think, you know, you guys know I love the system. So, I mean, it's cheating for me to even answer, but I think that, I think that, you know, that was the only caveat that I had, that if anything, a knight is somebody that really sucks at the Force at this specific point in history, so, but, you know, has some type of grasp and can be called a knight because there are none left. And if they were to ever make an Old Republic first, second, and third episode, I would probably guess that knights would be much more powerful, have much more XP. You know, to be declared a knight in the Old Republic, you'd need a lot more XP, or just the system in general would allow access to much more powerful with much less XP. But that's about it.
Yeah, see, I'd have to agree with you guys. I mean, I never played any of the Saga or any of the D6 editions. I was pretty hardcore D&D'er until I found Fantasy Flights. So I never played any of the other ones. But yeah, I know a lot of people, they base their opinion off of those. But the particular guys that made me think of this, they were talking mainly just about the movies as a reference. Yes, Nelson, you were one of them.
Wait, I argue because the movies, no matter how powerful they are, if you really, really watch the movies, they're a bit discontiguous at moments, like Force Move, right? You know, I'm not on Fantasy Flight's dev team or anything, but trying to get into that headspace, when you see Count Dooku rip off a column like, I'm out, and Yoda, who, I mean, I'm a fan of Yoda, so of course I'm a little bit partial. Anyway, but when Yoda's sitting there like making all those faces and straining and stressing, if you were to apply that to Fantasy Flight's mechanics, it's basically like he rolled too many dark side pips, had to spend a destiny point and take some strain for his power to work. When you're using your powers, they can always work. It's just a bit of a trade-off of how.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And the 150 XP, I would. It's another one. I'd have to kind of agree. I mean, if you're basing them off the movies or the Old Republic and stuff, that's definitely not a knight. They're not nearly powerful enough. But for the time setting, like so many of you said, for the time setting, it works. And there's not originally, I mean, not supposed to be any Jedi left other than Yoda, Obi-Wan, and Vader. Because in the originals,
I'd be interested to see how Kylo Ren is conveyed in the new game that's going to come out, because the Knights of Ren are actually knights, so we're going to see what knight play is going to be like in that new core book.
Yeah, I can't wait for that one. And like you guys said, there are no Jedi left. I mean, Obi-Wan, Yoda, and Vader in the originals is even called a Jedi. And he's not mentioned as being a Sith in the originals, in the original films. That didn't get brought up until the books and some of the original movies. Or the trilogies. Sorry, not the original movies. And like Chris said, I mean, not all Force users are going to be Jedi or going to be Sith. Those are just orders. Aside from that, I mean, you're just somebody who can manipulate this mystical energy, and you're, for lack of a better term, you're a wizard. And nobody quite understands the Force or anything except for those two orders. And, well, there are a few other orders that understand it, quite a few, but not that are mainstream.
Right. I just want to interject one thing. Is that you can even see it in the new movie with Maz, how Force sensitive she is when they go to Maz's castle. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's not a Jedi. That's just somebody who's lived with the Force for 1,000 years, who's cognitive of the story, who's literally a Force sensitive. Someone who hasn't developed that trait but has access to it, only certain parts. And you know, I think that was really a nice compliment to the game. I mean, obviously that wasn't the inspiration, but the game really works good to explain people like Maz.
Yeah, definitely. And like Nelson said, your points can work, or your force powers can work every roll. You just got to be willing to take the strain or the conflict and roll with it, and, or be capable of it. God damn, I got too many technologies going off around me. My phone, my tablet, next to my freaking computer is going to ding at me. But yeah, I think the main thing to get a character to feel like a Jedi or to feel like a Sith or anything, I think it's more about the role play than it really is about the stats and the dice rolls and such. I know one of the other points that they were arguing on there was that you should start out with, if you're going to be a knight, you should have a lot of force dice, 4 and 5 force dice and such, and it's that to me just doesn't quite feel right to me.
I don't. I mean, it's just maybe it's me, but I enjoy playing with handicaps. I enjoy playing low-level characters. I enjoy the possibility of more failure than success. I just think that it makes, I think it makes for better storytelling. And the fact that we just stated that, the premise or the purpose of the game is to inspire or motivate change in the narrative. I mean, they're called narrative dice, for Christ's sake. I mean, the whole purpose of the game is to shift and mold the narrative so that the stories that you tell are rich. So it's not a question of succeeding or failing or being powerful or having access to everything or having guaranteed successes. The way the dice work is, yeah, you might have that success, like you just said, Sean, and so did Nelson, but the game's purpose is to deal with the consequences. It's about cause and effect. You already know what's going to happen. But how you deal with those events based upon the advantage or setbacks, triumphs or despairs, these things are really the meat and bones of how the game works. And if players, it's also, and I'm going to go off on a little bit of a tangent here, but it's the reason why I give my players 100% agency. It's the reason I tell them, you get to narrate successes. You get to narrate how your advantages work. You get to narrate how your triumphs go. Because to me, I think that this is one of the few games where that exchange works really well, because the dice are simply guiding them on how they're going to approach it. How they interpret it is how they play the game. And as a GM, I'm always surprised, and you can watch a couple of my games, I'm laughing and like, holy cow, I can't believe he did that, because I'm surprised at how they choose to develop the storylines, and fundamentally all of us become GMs. It's just that I'm providing structure where they're providing gameplay, and that's the genius of this game. And I think that overlapping that idea is exactly how the force dice work, and that's why you don't need that many, because you can still generate intrigue and risk and deal and contend with conflict and strain with one die. You know what I mean? So it's just go.
But Andre, really, who plays tabletop role-playing games to role-play? You know?
Not me, sir. Not me.
Oh my goodness. Which role are we talking about again?
I know. No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I went on that tangent, but I just really think that that's kind of what it's all about. And if once it becomes about counting dice, then it's like, okay, we're playing for different reasons.
Well, okay. The one thing that I love about what Fantasy Flight has done as a whole is the fact that they have, in my opinion, like you just said, thoroughly covered that role play and that storytelling aspect. But if you look, of course, everybody knows I'm a power gamer, so I'm always delving into mechanics and tearing things apart. And the game system is mechanically built very soundly. Like, anyone saying that night level play doesn't feel like a night, 150 experience is not enough for a Jedi, they're right. Force users at earlier levels are incredibly weak when compared to your standard focused mechanics do mechanics better, gunslingers gunsling better, pilots pilot better, force users are But if you dedicate yourself to the force and that's all you want to do, it's about two things. Now mechanically, if you look at how they get further and further, they start to grow exponentially in power, making up for that deficit that they did earlier on, which, like so I said, you're a wizard. That's how wizards go. You know, anybody who's played a wizard really should know that in the beginning, wizards are like, well, we need you to protect me. We need you to protect me. Okay, how can I approach this situation incredibly intellectually and figure it out until I can get the power to stand toe-to-toe with others and then do spectacular things without the need of thousands of credits of investment. And that's the second part. If you're a force user, it's all about creative problem solving. It's about how to approach a situation and utilize the little tricks that you can do with the force to get that sense of power and accomplishment and that sense of meaning within your own group.
Yeah, but I'm of the frame of mind that I believe that that's intentional. I believe that force using is intentionally weakened in the game thematically. I think that there is no school of Jedi. There's no order. There's no nothing. And if you're just wandering around moving shit because, hey, look, I can move this little device with my mind, Mom. Check it out. Where are you gaining the discipline, the knowledge of the orders at this point in time in history? It's nowhere.
No. Force users in the game are not weakened as a whole. Their sort of power scaling is a little bit different.
Right.
But you can get to the point where you're throwing, YT-1300s around like fucking toys.
Right. No, but what I'm saying is you made an excellent point where you said a gunslinger is extremely powerful at lower levels than as compared to a force user. But I believe that there are many gunslingers around that can teach people how to gunsling. There's not many force schools around that can teach people to harness the force properly. And all I'm saying is that may be a thematic, intentional move in the game. That's all.
Yep, I agree with that 100%. How about Nathan or Chris? You guys have been quiet for a while.
I was just enjoying the conversation and Andre going off on each other.
Well, that's part of why we do this. Mm-hmm.
Well, kind of my take on the whole power, I agree a lot with Andre that, you're going to, more of these other skill or careers and stuff, you got people, you got gunslingers, you got smugglers, you got colonists out there, explorers, you even got the Rebel Alliance who's got their soldiers, their commanders, and all that training. But when it comes to force users, it's outlawed. The Empire has outlawed the force being used. They will either come after you, kill you, or try to recruit you in their Inquisitor Corps, or whatever they want to call that. With their band of instigators. So that does make sense. That the gunslingers, like if you've watched some of the Mandalorians, well, there's been a couple instances like the one Jedi we fought, well, you guys fought, and my character came in at the end. Was pretty. I thought we all decimated them pretty good, 4-on-1. But then we go 2 weeks down the road and we're facing 6 of them, and we almost didn't make it out.
Yeah.
So the perspective on that is also we were also pre-Empire. This is before even the Clone Wars is where we're playing. So it's supposed to be that way. They're supposed to be more powerful, more feared, and Mandalorians would be the ones that would have no problems going up against Jedi. That's what they were bred and trained for. But when you come fast forward to the Empire, you start using the Force out on Coruscant in the streets, you might as well kiss your ass goodbye at that point. You're dead.
Somebody's coming for you. Yeah.
I mean, that's where I kind of agree on all that. Nathan?
Yeah. In regards to the whole night level, I think that they actually covered that. I think that the Inquisitors, if you look at the Inquisitors in the back of Force and Destiny, that's what the night level characters are supposed to look like. They're mean as hell, and you really don't want to cross them. And they're that way because they were trained that way. No training, yeah, you're just kind of a loose cannon. You may fire off, you may get somewhere, heck, you may not know what you're doing. So I don't for the story wise, it plays out really well. I like watching people struggle with that. You really have to use everything else. You can't just go, hey, I'm a Force user. You got to go, hey, I got a pistol here. I got to wear body armor. I got to do this. There's all these other elements that have to play into it. Otherwise, your Force user's toast. I mean, he's done. I mean, he won't last very long. So
I think I'm the only one that's going to be arguing from the mechanical standpoint here. But yeah, all right. As far as, again, mechanics and like the balance of mechanics, the reason why gunslingers usually gunsling better is because, they get a couple of ranks in either range heavy or range light, and they pick up a gun, and the gun is already dealing a significant amount of damage. The Force user and the Force powers don't do that. Not right off the bat. You can't just invest in a Force power the same as you would a range light skill and simply decide to, point your Force power and do 6 damage plus 1 for every additional success, But with like 10 experience points invested in Force move, you could be that little bastard in the corner who pulls pins from people's grenades from across the room. It's about how to utilize your power. Like, look at any iteration. Okay, maybe not any iteration. Like, the video games are a little bit more about that sort of, unstoppable force aspect, the destruction and all that. But look at Clone Wars, right? There was a scene in Clone Wars, the animated series, not the CG, where Mace Windu was fighting just like hordes and hordes of these droids, and he lost his lightsaber at the time. And mind you, while some of his attacks were like Force-empowered brawl attacks and, Force move crushing them, there was one move that I thought was magnificent, and that's simply when he used his power to unscrew every bolt in a droid. Or it's not that, that mechanical oppressive force, I'm going to roll some Force die and deal 12 damage that you can't mitigate because I'm awesome. It's about those little thinking. I think Force users to play a Force user is a thinking man's game, more so than the other classes. Well, some of the other classes, and plane, and, that plane just made me lose my track of thought. I was just thinking of My Cousin Vinny, which I watched the first time I. Anyway, never mind. I'm done.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you. I mean, as far as the mechanical standpoint, you probably are going to be the only one to argue the mechanical standpoint. As anybody who's played any of my games or even watched any of my games, you'll know that I'm not a rules player. They're just a guideline. I go pretty much by the seat of my pants as to how it feels at the moment. But yeah, low level is my favorite place to play at. You've really got to work for everything, especially with a Force user, because a Force user, like Nelson has said, you've got to invest a lot of experience points to get your powers to really do any damage or to really do anything. Whereas regular players, I mean, they invest a couple of experience points here or there, and they're ready to just smash stuff, blow it up, and that's part of why the Mando 8 game is they're just almost an unstoppable force. On top of the factor that it was originally only supposed to be a 4-part game, so I handed out quite a bit of experience at the beginning to to get it up to being at that level, and everybody was just having so much fun that we decided to keep it going.
Yeah.
And they've got 300 and 400 experience points in total, and they've souped up all their weapons and their armor and all that stuff, and they're just dealing massive amounts of damage. I mean, hell, we got one player that with a pistol, he's dealing 12 damage base before you add in all of the extra successes and all that stuff. Because
but I think that's also. I think also when you're talking about comparing weapons to the Force, I think there's or the skillful use of a weapon versus the Force. The weapons are always going to be, or using a skill that uses a good weapon or what have you. There's always going to wield that. When we're talking about a damage or effect, we're talking. Weapons are supposed to be effective. The skillful use of a weapon is supposed to cause damage, and it's supposed to be effective. And one thing that I like about this game is that you get full damage with you succeed. And the thing is that going back to the gunslinger or various other combative kind of careers, that's what's to be expected. You know what I mean? You want to be extremely powerful at a low level because you're wielding a weapon. Mechanically, yes. Obviously, Nelson probably knows the game through and through more than any of us. But what I will say is that thematically, if you compare Jango Fett to any, Knight level Jedi, you're going to have the same debate because Jango will whoop their ass with weapons. And the issue, if we're talking about, now, I'm not talking about Jango versus a master. We could debate that all day, too. The issue, we're talking about Jango versus a knight. Jango versus a knight is Jango will whoop some ass. I'm sorry. And, it's really, if you want to talk about how weapons users are used in the game versus Force users, I honestly, I can't reiterate this enough. I think it is intentional. The Force users are supposed to suck at first. And it's not that the system is broken, and it's not that it's negating the worth of the Force user. That's supposed to be the way it is. It's supposed to be that way at this moment in history, so that when they sell books for a different part of history, Knight level play will be different because you'll get different XP levels, and that's the way it's going to be, of course.
I don't think it'll be different because you know what, they did that with the Warhammer 40K books, initially the first editions, where they released 3 books that were supposed to be interchangeable, and they had 3 entirely different levels of play, which made them completely imbalanced to be played with each other.
No, but the difference between that game and these is that the mechanic between all 3 of those games was completely different.
I think it's the idea of Knight level play only being the experience it is.
Of course, and that we agree. But what I'm saying is that they can augment a different core rule book with a different set of criteria in history, saying that knights gain more power, or knights in this point in time of history get 350 XP, because in this point in history, knights are much more powerful than the knights of 1BY. Yeah. So you're not compromising the time period. What you're doing is just simply augmenting character development to fit the theme of the time frame. And that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying that they're changing the mechanic. I'm saying that they made a good decision to make it so that the mechanic can be shifted. So if they make Old Republic books, dude, Knight level play is going to be like 800 XP. You know what I mean? Because knights back then were trained from childhood. So it's accessible. It's still manipulative, and it's flexible enough to be moved. That one feature in the game can be moved up and down to dictate knights in specific points in history, and that's kind of why I like it.
Yeah, I think thematically, I'm jumping back to that side of the table. Thematically, if you read any of the books, watch any of the movies, cartoons, read any of the comics, a Force user is only recognized as being a Force user once they've attained the power of badassery for that recognition. You know, That's why, back in the Clone Wars, they just equipped a bunch of droids with blasters because they point and they shoot, and pointing and shooting happens to be deadly. But Force users, like a child, if thematically you want to play a Jedi and you want 100 point, you're playing a child alongside adults as far as levels of experience. Thematically, if you want to be a grown-ass man using the Force and expect to have that level of power, you've been doing it much longer than your average gunslinger.
Well, no, because if all the thing that you have been doing since birth has been doing telekinesis, but you haven't been developing that skill, explored it, or had any training, you probably could have just been moving bolts in the machines that you've been repairing the same way for 30 years.
I'm going to say overall thematics.
Oh, okay. I don't know what that means, but okay.
Okay, like the general feeling, the general vibe. Going back to moving bolts and machinery telekinetically for the past 30 years, a gunslinger points a gun at you, you move the bolts in the blaster pistol so that it backfires on him. Because you've been doing technological things like that for 30 years.
Yeah, but that would take discipline and training. If anything, you would be reflexive about it, and the bolts would fly everywhere, and the setback dice would be rolling and everything. I mean, come on.
But it's possible.
Oh, absolutely. There's always a possibility, but you wouldn't be developed to the point of expertise.
Yeah. I think the point that the people that are arguing that it's so weak, like from a distasteful standpoint, is the fact that they don't realize the possibilities.
I agree with that. Yeah. I agree with that, and I also think that it's also the job of the GM to build up the players to understand what those possibilities are and to help them explore how to use the powers and motivate specific decision making. Not not railroad them in the narrative, but show them, kind of guide them by the example of NPCs or by scenario building, and allow them to understand what the possibilities are with the limited amount of access to the Force that they have. But
I felt like I played a powerful Force user in Sean's game for a while, and I sucked.
Yeah.
Yeah, Echo was something else, but a lot of his were the talents. The fear auras and all that stuff that just made it really hard for anybody that got within short range of him to do anything.
Yeah, but that's also Force related.
Yes, it is. But yeah, he was, as far as Force powers go, his move and sense and bind and all that. He was crap, but as far as everything else goes that goes along with being a Force user, he was phenomenal, because it just, the things that you had on him, being a power gamer as you are, you had him set up to where it was almost impossible for anybody who got within short range to do anything.
But it's also the choices and the luck. Peace out, brother.
I gotta go. Take care, guys. Thanks for having me.
Later, You're always welcome here, sir.
All right, man. Yes, sir. Thanks. Bye.
Mm-hmm.
I think, personally, it was a little bit about the luck. One is the luck of the die. Two is the choices of how to approach and structure my part of a situation when that situation reveals itself. Oh, I remember the word I wanted to use before that damn plane flew over my head and I thought of my cousin Vinny. Creative problem solving. It's all about creative problem solving when you're a Force user. I'm sorry. Look.
Yeah, very much so.
Well, on that, if you go back, Sean, you'll be familiar with it, and anybody else who's watched the B-Back trilogy, back in the second episode, when you guys faced those two Inquisitors, I built these guys to be powerful. They were supposed to be a tough battle. Between Sean's character Devlin and Chris's character Melek, they brought these two Jedi, or these two Inquisitors, down to, their puppets at one point. I mean, the one, I think, was it Devlin or was it Melek that pretty much brought him down to this one, the biggest, baddest, beefiest one with the lightsaber, who would have annihilated them if he had the chance, was brought down to his knees and could not do a thing. And I didn't think about the creative uses you guys would come up with when it came to creating these characters. Had I thought about it and thought you guys were going to get that creative, I made it a little different. But you guys saw an opening, used your force abilities to the best potential, and pretty much decimated these guys. And I think that's where, you know, especially with Echo did a lot of the same thing, just took a circumstance, knew his force abilities so well, and twisted it for the situation to work in our favor.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember that exactly. Chris's character, I don't remember what he did, but he did something with his force abilities that basically caused the guy to lose an action or whatever for the round. And then Devlin stepped in there with the double lightsabers and rolled like 6 advantages and just decimated him and dropped him to his knees and all that with the extra advantages and the way I used and the way we all used our rolls. And that's a lot of what it came down to on that one, is the way we were rolling. And that's a lot of the way any of it really comes down to is how we roll. Now, yeah. How
somebody is talking about rolling.
Yeah, how you're rolling the dice. Now, when I first started playing the game, the dice rollers loved me. I couldn't get a bad roll, but now, yeah, getting a good roll now is almost impossible for me. Except for like once every 6 or 7 games, then I'll have a night where I can't roll bad, but the rest of the time I can't roll for crap. So it really comes down to the creative issue, how you're going to get around a situation.
Well, I also think that you shouldn't get too hung up on your character. And point being, I'm stepping away from the force users. I'm going to the tech side of things. In the Mando Age, my first character I played was like heavy tech savvy guy. Not really good with guns, not really good with melee or anything, but really heavy with the tech. And man, there was a couple of times in there where you botched some serious rolls. I mean, it was bad, and I was like, holy crap, what is going on here? But it happens. That's the way the game's designed. It's not going to be 100% all the time, you know, top of your game, and you just have to learn how to roll with it. So it's the same thing with the force users. The other thought was that force users are, you could look at it as a disadvantage. They've got 2 trees they have to deal with. Not only do they have their specialization, but they've also got the force trees that they got to worry about. So yeah, you got a gunslinger. All he does is he just focuses right straight down his specialization, picks up all the skills for using his blasters, his whatever. Force users have to split it, and you have to figure out what the balance is. Are you going to go with your talents? Are you going to go with your skills? Are you going to go with the force abilities? And I think it's designed that way just so that you keep the balance. And, you know, there may not be any balance in the force now, but, you know, there's at least balance in the game.
It is, because if you think about it, if you're a force user and you take a couple of ranks in range light, and all you do is walk around with a pistol and get one little force power. You never even have to use the dark side version of this force power, but heal harm, you can walk around with like a super powered infinite metapack at all times that you can use on yourself, on your allies, on anyone for free. No worrying about paying, no worrying about carrying. You get locked up and tortured, you're metapacking yourself because you got a power to heal you like a metapack all day long. That's not that brute force like, yeah, I'm gonna buy it ass, you know, but it's actually very powerful if you stop and think about it. You know, force move, a few experience down the force move tree, and you know it's not that powerful. But again, creative problem solving if you're in a cantina and 7 guys have like pistols drawn at you and you know you're gonna get your ass whooped and there's no way out of it, force move the ceiling and whatever pillar is supporting the ceiling, remove that and let everything collapse on them.
Yeah.
You know, you're not directly doing that uber super stuff, but if people have problems coming up with creative problem solving, creative uses for force powers, just look at the universe. You know, they're pulling pillars out. They're using force move to bring guns to their hand, lightsabers to their hand. You know, pull a pin out of a grenade on someone's grenade belt. Like, golly, somebody's wearing a helmet. Force move the helmet around so they're blinded. You know,
Yeah.
there's so many really cool. And then when you're in the game and do cool stuff like that, it's like, wait, what? That was
Did you
cool.
do that?
Yeah, you know, that's the glory.
I wish I would have
Take
thought of
it
that
off
last
quickly.
weekend.
You know me. I kind of abuse. I'm the only person that most people I know that can kill people with non-deadly spells in Dungeons and Dragons. So
Hey, you and yeah, I played with you in a couple of those games. Yeah. Hey, I'm just gonna light this guy up like a bonfire, and then I'm like, what? Okay, cool.
no, it was we're moving a little bit, but just for sake of example, the Ironhead Chronicles game I played, where it's like a little bit of a car chase going on, and we're driving on like a dirt road, like and they're firing at us and whatever, and I happen to have the Mold Earth spell, so I just cast Mold Earth to mold a wedge, and they drove over the wedge, and the car went flying. It crashed and burned and blew up, and the people inside the car died, and I killed them with a spell that doesn't deal any damage. It's just about creative problem solving, creative uses, and waiting for those moments where you can get something. I mean,
Well,
if the
you like
world were
maximize
real,
the return though.
yeah, you know, if
Maximize the return.
like I gotta argue with you a little bit about not getting attached to your characters. I tend to love a lot of my characters, and it makes me able to put myself in those shoes in that world. In the real world, I don't want to go out in blazes of glory and die all the time. You know, that's not something I go out in the streets and search for. So if somebody's chasing me and I could dip left and like throw some sand in the air or find someone who looks like me and try to get some confusion, you have to think about these things. Like if you were really being chased or approached with those types of situations, what would you do?
Yeah, I gotta agree with you. I tend to get a little attached to my characters if I play them more than just a couple of sessions, and I think that's when you get the best role play is when your player is attached to the character. But at the same time, you've got to remain that same little bit of balance of disattachment, to where if they die, it's not too big a thing. I mean, or if they decide to go off and train somewhere else and you're not going to play them anymore for a while. You're not too devastated and take a week and a half to figure out what your next character is going to be. Especially with games that I run. You've all played in my games. You all know my games tend to be combat heavy. Especially because at the edge of the Empire game, you guys are all scum and scoundrel thieves and crooks. In the Mando 8 game, well, I mean, you're Mandalorians. If you don't come to the game equipped for battle, you've done something wrong.
Yeah.
So in those instances, you've got to have a backup plan or another character in mind that you would like to explore, as well as still being attached to the character that you are playing, so that way you play them to the fullest of their ability to being played.
Yeah.
But Yeah, as far as force users and all that go, I mean, yeah, to beat a dead horse here, force users compared to a gunslinger or compared to a smuggler or soldier or any of that, they are going to be, or at least seem, weaker than the rest of the party because they've got two, three, four, or two or three trees that they're using their experience points on, that they've got to split everything up in. Whereas your mercenary soldier, he's got one tree to fill out, and that's it. Unless he decides to branch out into other specializations. But how many players branch out into more than one specialization before they've filled up their main specialization, or gotten to a point in their main specialization where they feel comfortable branching out? And one out of five.
I think it depends on the characters or the people playing them, though.
Well, yeah, like I said, I mean, it depends on the player. I mean, maybe 1 out of 5 players is going to build a character that has 2 specializations or 3 specializations before they've filled or mostly filled or gotten their specialization to the point where they are comfortable with that specialization and ready to move on to another one. Nelson, of course, I mean, he's the oddball out everywhere he goes. He does things like nobody does. Over there raising his hand and shit. But he's...
Well, I raised my hand too, though.
He just did a one-finger, though.
Echo,
put his hand on the screen.
I started playing Echo with 2 specializations, so, you know.
Well, that's true, yeah.
Yeah, but how many people do that, though? Not, I mean, maybe 1 out of 5.
Yeah, I would say that might be more accurate.
It's okay. We could beat a dead horse till we make glue. It's perfectly fine with me. First thing, Fantasy Flight is about making the type of character, not mechanically, but the thematic person. It's about making the person in the Star Wars universe you want to play, and that's why nothing is restricted. Well, I can't say nothing. A droid can't be a Force user, but other than that, nothing is restricted. Like, you can dip into any tree you want, any skill you want. There are varying costs for ease, but there's no restrictions. You know, if I want to make the gunslinging badass, but that gunslinging badass is a Force user, then so be it. You know, I could have a badass gunslinging Force user. They're not very Jedi-like, but they could still be very badass, very powerful, very awesome to play. And also, Force users are not, in the entire scope of play, Force users are not weaker. They're on a different power scale, and they play vastly differently. Like, the tech user, right? A techie, someone who doesn't fight, who doesn't negotiate, doesn't pilot, doesn't have what would traditionally be seen as an active role in a party, who is very cerebral as far as how you play a character, are very powerful, but their strength, abilities, and powers aren't as out there and as obvious. You know, and I think for the most part, that's where Force users sit.
Yeah, when I say weaker, I don't mean that they're overall, I mean, long run weaker. Long run, they're going to have the ability to be far more devastating. Sorry, my wife and daughter. They're going to be far more devastating than some of the other players. I mean, right out of the gate. And you get your starting XP, maybe you're 2 or 3 games in, and you've gained 50 experience points. Right out of the gate, they are going to be thematically a little bit weaker than the others if you're not an out-of-the-box thinking type of player. Now, granted, yeah, you can always use move to you're being chased. Use your move power to dig a hole in front of them or whatever, and they run right into the hole, and then you just move the dirt right back on top of them.
But it's okay. In
But-
strictly combative games, views are skewed, right?
Yeah.
There's plenty of politics. There could be plenty of politics in any game, but in Star Wars specifically, there's plenty of politics. There's tiers of politics. There's the politics of Jedi, the politics of Sith, the different orders, the politics of the Republic, the politics of the Rebellion after the Republic falls, the politics of the Empire, and the varying criminal politics, the Hutt cartels, the Black Suns. You can get a pretty in-depth game of intrigue going on, and your gunslinger, possibly even your techie, your quote-unquote party face would be very powerful, but so too would a Force user, because misdirect, Force, what is the other one? They have powers that
Sense, bind, foresee,
like,
are all good.
Battle Mind isn't bad either.
There's a lot of stuff in there, that can easily be used, especially Force sensitive tree. There's a way to build a Force user without going into like the traditional night level play, things that people feel is a little underpowered, right? There's a way to build a Force user which makes that Force user incapable of failing at almost any sort of interaction. They're the perfect party face. You can get like triple your dice in successes, and it's in the game. You've got to read it and understand the mechanics and stuff. You can stress people's minds out and do a massive amount of damage as far as strain. You're not killing people, but you can stress the hell out of people. That's
You're still incapacitating them, though.
Yeah, like, you don't have the glory of a bright beam of energy and the going on. Maybe that's what people are missing. We want to electrify you. I only have 150 experience points, so I don't have the 2 points to even start the tree, but I don't care. Maybe that's what they're missing. I don't know. But God, fucking Force users are amazing, especially in this game.
I think they are too. I mean, that's part of why I didn't quite understand the argument that was going on in the club earlier this month about it. I mean, no, you're not going to feel like the Jedi from the movies, but you're not supposed to with that experience range. I mean, the guys in the movies, I mean, they're all masters. They're all the big badass. I mean, you're not going to feel that way.
But then,
If
I think that's the organization, though. I think it's a matter of the organization that they come from. I mean, the Jedi Order is gone. I mean, so there's nothing for discipline. There's no regiment. There's nothing to give you that elevated status.
Yeah.
I got Force. Okay, what do I do with it? I mean, great. I'm going to throw this here and throw this there. I mean, yeah. You are very inexperienced and very undisciplined.
I think that's a little bit of a misnomer, though, because even in earlier levels, it's possible to taste that sort of badassery in the movies if you approach it in the same way they did in those movies. It's about the creative problem solving, Palpatine was fighting.
It comes more down to how you play the character. It comes more down to the role playing. Whereas the argument, though, in the club was about the mechanics.
Yeah.
The mechanics support and promote the role play. They're not just
they do.
Where they God, it's like in D&D, the illusion spell. Everyone always craps on minor illusion as a cantrip. It's so massively powerful if you just use it creatively, intellectually. You apply it in the areas where it's most effective for, what you can use it for.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, but sorry, Chris, go.
No, I was just agreeing. Sorry.
Yeah, but
Triple head nod.
I mean, it's supported through the mechanics, but at the same time, I mean, it comes more to the player. I mean, does that player think outside of the box, or are they more of a in-the-box type of thinking? And well, let's do this exactly the way things are written and this and that. I mean, if you do it that way,
This is another huge debate I can go on forever about. Okay, that whole thing aside, forgive me for saying, but fuck that notion, because this is a tabletop role-playing game. The box is pretty fucking huge, okay? Creative problem solving should be like the largest layer in this box.
yeah, but a lot of people don't think that way.
And that is a tragedy. It's a
Okay.
freaking
Yes.
tragedy.
But that's because a lot of people are coming from, like, I played the Saga edition, I played the D6 edition, and I played all those well before I ever picked up a Star Wars video game. Now, the Star Wars video games, they do all that stuff. They blow the thing, like, way out of proportion. And then you're just like, oh, how do I get that? How do I get that? You're not going to get that. It's not designed in this game that way. You get
Yeah,
it.
you're not going to be pulling Star Destroyers down out of the
Okay,
sky.
maybe
right
not
off.
Star Destroyers, but I don't care. Soaring around Millennium Falcons is pretty amazing. Okay?
Oh, I'm not going to
Picking
argue
up
that
and
factor.
Yeah, hey, there's a giant Hulk with an army. I just throw his ship at him. He's got what? He came down in a shuttle. I'll land it. Whatever. To throw his ship at him. I mean, come on, really. That's pretty bananas for power.
Yeah.
And that's probably a little bit beyond the night level, but that's that raw. But in the video games, the reason people move from video games to tabletop games is because tabletop games allow for things that you can't do in video games.
Yeah.
A tabletop game is adaptive. Say hello.
I
What? Come here.
got
That's what I did. Before I got into Star
Hey, kid.
Wars, but before I got into this game, I was a big time video gamer. That's all I ever did was game, either online or on my computer here. And after a while, you feel boxed in. You're tied into what the game's set forth to you. You are railroaded in most video games. Even if you play an MMORPG, you're still railroaded. I played Star Wars Galaxies for like 3 years, but there was only certain things you could do. You couldn't just go out and say, hey, I want to do that. You had to have a guild that did role-playing to even get a taste of that. And even then, we were limited. Because, you got a video screen, you got certain planets, you can't go on all these other planets. So they didn't have any mechanics to create these own planets and, create your own missions like that. So, yeah, that's why I went to RPGs. And especially this game, because I like storytelling. I've always liked that. I grew up with a grandfather who told me stories all the time. I love doing storytelling. I love writing stories. This game is great for that. Because not only do you tell your story, you get to work with other people. You get to work with the GM. I mean, this game is designed so well that you can collaborate on a saga, which I'm in the works of planning on doing anyway. Working with other people, saying, hey, we're doing this game for a while. I want to take a break from GMing for a while. We could still run the same story. I want to be a player, but this player wants to GM for a while. Let him GM. Bring in a player, and you still got your same group, and it's still, the same game.
Yeah,
I love that.
With the way the dice mechanic in this one works, I mean, it's all it is 100% collaborative storytelling, especially if you do it the way Andre does it, and the players they role play out all of their positive dice rolls, and the GM does all the negative ones. It is 100% collaborative. And even if you do it the way I am known to do it and say, okay, yeah, you roll this many successes, you do something along these lines and this and that. You tell me what this does or this does. It's still all collaborative. The players have just as much input as the GM, and they do in other systems. But I think this system, personally, I think this system does it best.
Well,
But
a question on at least for like when you guys like watch the movies or the books, do you ever get the sense that it's just like a real minor story? It's not really important, or do you get this feeling that this is something like seriously epic? It's like big time scale, you know, and you step into this world, you want to have that experience. That's to me is what fantasy did. It gives you that epic sense of proportion. I mean, you're like, yeah, we're, you know, whatever we're doing, it's epic. You know, you don't want to sit there and go, pew, pew. You know, I missed him, shucks. You know, yeah, you want the dramatic. That's the whole thing about Star Wars. It's epic, it's dramatic, and you want that every time. You're like, bring it to me. I'm in whatever fashion. Even when you fail dramatically, you know, you're like, yeah.
That's okay. Old Star Wars movies, new Star Wars movies, right? New Star Wars movies, prequels were about the bang bang, blowy up stuff for the most part, right? As far as the focus of the movies, the old movies, the original movies, were about the story of the characters, the character development.
Yeah.
So the sense of that grand scale, in my opinion, came because your view of everything that was going on was much more narrow because it was about the character development and what they're doing in this grand world. You know, you didn't get the grand world summarized. Like, while I enjoyed the movie, spoiler alert, I guess, whatever. But the the New Hope, you know, the scene where all them shuttles and everything is just like, ooh, ooh, everything coming from everywhere, and then the big super uber Death Star just showing how powerful it is, just because for absolutely no fucking reason, you know. That to me diminishes the sense of the scale and the drama of things going on, because it's not so much where you already know they have that power. That power has been inferred, and you don't know what's going on there, and you got to worry about it. And what do you do as a character while you're worrying about it? And the story that develops from that, it's more like, okay, we're gonna do this game by bullet points. Big Death Star thingy, planet thingy, fight thingy, game over, have a good night. You know, you don't get that sense of scale.
yeah, yeah, definitely. The newer movies were definitely all about the big bang, blow them up, and let's show what's going on everywhere and how it all is working together. And the older ones were all about what's happening with these couple of people and how they're developing, who they're becoming, definitely. But well, in my last game with Chris's character Kerr, I mean, we were talking about it before the video started here. I mean, I blew his character up with a thermal detonator he had. And it was a simple force move ability. Now, for a simple force move ability, I mean, yes, it's just plainly the roll. Did you make your force points? Do you take the strain? Do you flip the destiny point? This and that, and it shouldn't be any more than that. But for the feel that I got from it, and from the way he had described it, I mean, he pulls this thermal detonator out. He's got a death grip on the thing, and he's threatening to blow everybody up if he's not released. Well, I thought, okay, this Jedi is going to try and throw this thing down the hallway, but he's got a death grip on it. So it's not just a simple, okay, I pick this can up and move across the table with my mind type of thing. I've got to wrench this thing from his hand and get it thrown across the room or thrown it down the hallway. So I decided, okay, we're going to make it, along with having to roll for force points. We're going to make this a contested type of roll where this character is going to use his discipline against his brawn for the death grip he's got on this thing. I rolled a failure and threats, but got my force points. So, okay, he does move it, he does knock it from his hand, but he doesn't throw it down the hallway like he had intended. Instead, he just simply knocks it from his hand. This active thermal detonator lands at his feet and goes off.
Force doesn't say everything.
So I mean, it was one of those things of, okay, yep, it blows up, it blows everybody up in that tight little corridor. Because I mean, even without getting the blast, the advantages to activate blast, you're using a thermal detonator. Nobody's laying on top of it. Nobody's doing anything to cover this thing up to where they're the only one getting hurt. Everybody's standing maybe 3-4 feet apart. This thing goes off, everybody's going to get hurt. It doesn't just blow up and hurt one person. So it wasn't in the rules. It was totally against the rules. But I thought it fit better with the situation than playing it exactly rules as written. Now, a lot of people would disagree and say, oh no, you've got to do this by the rules and this and this and this has to happen. As you all know, I'm not a rules as written player.
Even within the rule book, when it talks about blast weapons, it makes a notion about the blast weapons and the thematic idea of a blast weapon going off on in a smaller area would just encompass the entire area rather than having to worry about the minutiae of the mechanics. It's actually stated in the core rules.
Yeah.
So it is actually a part of the rules. It's just knowing when to apply it for the drama of the situation.
Yeah, but it's like the one part of the rules that most people either overlook or don't think about. They think, okay, well, no, it needs to have this many advantages to do that, and it needs to do this and this. But yeah, I mean, as far as it shouldn't have been rules as written, it shouldn't have been a contested role. But for the way the situation was described and the way the situation, everything was working out, I felt that it should be. And either Chris and my other players felt the same way, or they just didn't speak up and say, hey, no, that shouldn't be that way. Which I don't.
No, I thought it was a great way to do it, actually. I mean, to be honest, I mean, I knew, coming in the mindset of me being the player during that game, I knew the risks of what as far as me, the player, knew the risks of what would happen to my character if something were to go wrong. I didn't play my character. I wanted to play my character, and I love playing my characters, with the point of, they may die at any time. I come to realize that I do love my characters. I do, that's the way I play them. I cherish them. But it's also part of the game, and it's part of, what we're kind of doing. We're not only just playing a game, we're also, videotaping, putting this online for other people to enjoy. We're also entertaining people as much as playing the game. So I loved it on both aspects, that I was entertained personally by that, because it's like, oh yeah, that would happen in real life totally. Especially when you're coming to a Mandalorian, you're not just coming against some common person who would know a combat situation. You're coming from somebody who's battle-hardened, who's been in several situations. Of course you're going to have that death row. I thought it was a great call as far as, it's going to be Kerr's will versus, this Jedi's will. Who's gonna win? How's this gonna play out?
Man, if I had that force move,
role play.
Like instead of trying to rip that out of your hand, I would have just force moved your fingers on it tighter. and like punch them in the face or something. Like,
That is so creepy, Dad.
you know, so he can't let go of the detonator. Anyway,
That would
But
have
again-
made it interesting.
you know,
Yeah.
like it's all about basically. It's basically, you know, the whole idea of beating that dead horse. That the answer is all about what you do with what you're given.
Yep. I would have to agree. And the idea of beating the dead horse, I think we've beaten this one pretty well. For this, geez, ladies, for this chat tonight, are there anything else that you guys want to talk about while we're on here, or do you want to call it good for the night?
I could ramble on for like ages.
Oh, so could I.
But
I
in
could go-
regards to what, actually using the Force?
Yeah, it doesn't have to be just about the Force. It could be anything Star Wars from this point on. Because I think we've pretty well beat the Force users and the dice mechanic and all that stuff pretty well this evening. I don't think we're going to really say a whole lot more without repeating ourselves.
I could cry
so, I mean,
about
if
the
there's-
latest movie. I could cry about it. My tears of blood would fall.
So, I mean, if there's anything else Star Wars we want to talk about, feel free. We got a little more time here. I usually try to have these things go for about an hour, hour and a half, so we got a little time still.
All right.
I've seen a lot of
The
that.
idea of intrigue. All right. No, you're not going in front of the camera.
No, this one.
No, you're not going there either. The idea of intrigue, right?
Okay.
The fact that it doesn't feel like a lot of games have any. It's an afterthought, if anything. And why is that? You know, why does it feel like that? The idea of having either the criminal intrigue, the political intrigue, the intrigue of the actual orders of the Force, you know, the
Are you trying
intrigue
to back
in
into your politics?
what happened?
Is
The
that where you're headed? Yeah.
the idea of stuff, you know, the idea of the grander scheme, the bigger picture, the things happening outside in the universe that don't care about your characters, but your characters mean something in the
York.
scope in which they're being played and being viewed and stuff.
Right. You're.
York?
Yeah. It's. I think it's too much of the bang and the flash type kind of thing. It's easier to create a game with more bang and flash than it is to like layer the levels of complexity into it. It's just a lot easier to do it that way. You just say, all right, you guys go in, and this is the scene you got, and who do you shoot? You know, what I mean? It's like, well, can we talk our way out? No, you shoot somebody. Well, is he a friend or a foe? You shoot somebody. No, it's like you really got to kind of sort the details out. A lot of times people are just too much into that. Like, I pull my blaster, I'm gonna shoot with her. You know, it's like whatever. Those kind of games get kind of boring. But you can't negotiate your way out.
In the venue of Star Wars, right? Which, I mean, this happens over many genres and whatnot, but in the venue of Star Wars, right? Intrigue seems to be such a huge part of the universe. It's built into the universe, the way the stories play out. The fact that I forget the name of the book, but the book where Palpatine had first came up, right? And how he became a senator, and then the story of how the senator became the emperor. The entire Star Wars universe, as we know it, as we enjoy it, exists solely because of the intrigue. So why is it a fact? Like, why do we have to have that straight and narrow approach? Okay, this is what's going to happen. You guys stole some stuff. You're going to have to shoot some stuff, and then you'll sell some stuff. Game over. You know, why is it that you know, on the rails, as it were, or the straight arrow of this one particular specific definitive narrative rather than, this underlying intrigue that maybe doesn't get resolved in a dozen, 2 dozen, 3 dozen games, but that it's there and driving the reasons for everything else.
Yeah.
And Star Wars is a great platform for that, and the mechanics of this iteration of Star Wars is a great platform for that.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. That's very true. Not a whole lot of games give you that level, though. I mean, if you go diving into some other tabletop games, you just don't get that. I mean, if you get a GM that's well crafted his game and his game environment, you get it like all the time. But yeah, I play in a lot of other games, and it's I guess that's what I look for when I play a game, though. Is I like that intrigue. I like the unknown not being like revealed right away. You're like, okay, here it is. I like actually having to like figure it out. I'm like, okay, is there something else going on here that I'm not seeing? So, but I mean, and that's the best part about the game, though. I mean, especially with the fact that you get players can flip flop and become the GM, the storyteller for the time being, based on how the dice roll out and how you play your character. I mean, who needs a sandbox? I mean, you got everybody's playing. I mean, that's probably the best part about it too. So.
Chris, why you quiet, man? Why you quiet and upset looking?
Well, I'm just kind of. No, I'm not upset. It's my serious face. Or some people, my resting bitch face. But as far as intrigue and regarding that, I think it really depends on your GM and the players. You got to create that. The GM's got to kind of help create those moments of intrigue, and then the players have kind of got to follow along with it. They're gonna they kind of have to want to. Ooh, what's this over here? Let's go find out. Oh crap, we got some major problems here. Now we're involved in it. What are we gonna do? And it could last, for several sessions of, what you're talking about. I think it's both. It's really, it comes to the GM and it comes to the players. You got to have that right balance between both to kind of do it. The G and like we've discussed before, it's a collaborative thing. This whole game is based on being collaborative. So you can't just push that responsibility on your GM, or you can't just push it on the players. You have to work together to create that intrigue. I think in the games I played with Sean, the Sylvia Utah in our game, that was a great piece of intrigue, and it's still we don't even know if that's resolved yet or not. We think it is, possibly, but it may not.
It feels that in a lot of these games going on, a lot of games being played, even in Star Wars, that doesn't feel like it's there. Like the idea with Sylvia Utah, the idea with Momoda, and the fact that they're reoccurring presences makes the games feel bigger because they're reoccurring presences. It's like an H.P. Lovecraft story. There are things so much larger outside of your scope that you mean nothing to those things, which makes them feel bigger, makes them feel more, right? So in the game, there are things as characters that are so far outside of your scope that it makes the world, the universe, the setting, the game feel bigger. It's not just like again, you mentioned Star Wars Galaxies. I played the other one, the Old Republic, where it was a fun game, but everything felt like you went from one planet to the next, and you could have been in one building the entire fucking time. The entire planet is just one building with a couple of missions in it. It reduces that sense of scope. The idea of traveling from planet to planet does nothing for the scope of the game. Does nothing to make you feel like you're in something larger. It's the idea and the notion that there are things going on other than you, outside of your reach, outside of your understanding, And again, you know, the responsibility being incumbent upon the players at that moment to ask those questions and to search out that knowledge of what those things are and how can they better get, you know, a hold of those reins of their own destiny, is to find out what those things are. And especially in Star Wars, that the only reason the story ever existed was because of this intrigue. Why does it seem it doesn't feel as much of a thing in these games as often as it should? Is why. Like, how can we promote that sort of feeling, you know? How can we promote that from GMs? I mean, the stories themselves give you so much without even having to come up with anything, really. The stories give you so much. The fact that that in our game we've got Lando Calrissian and how he seems to be approaching you know, he's doing stuff, things are happening that are like, we don't know what the hell he's doing. He's, you know, we're a passing moment in this individual's life.
She's not that, Dad. You're creepy.
Right? You're creepy.
No, you, Dad.
But like how can that be better ingrained in the mindsets of one GMs that structure the game, but more importantly as well, two players that need to ask those questions so that, you know, the story can unfold, and that sense of, you know, that grand sense of scope and scale and that grand story, feeling like the original trilogy where it's focused on your character development and how your character's growing and what your character's doing to get a handle of those reins so that they can guide their own destiny when once they were powerless, how can they attain this power? And not just by getting experience points, but by finding out issues in the world and you know, not being a puppet to those things that they don't yet know about. You know, how to implement those better in the games.
Just I love that you guys just stroked my ego like crazy, because this whole thing of intrigue and all that. I'm thinking, you know, I think I'm kind of guilty here. I don't really put enough out there that brings the intrigue of what's going on. I think I'm thinking I'm mostly just putting things out in front of you and, okay, this is what we're going to do tonight. But then you mentioned Momoda, you mentioned Utah, you mentioned the Lando and all that, and I'm thinking, okay, yeah, all right, I'm not doing too bad then.
You're still doing things that, regardless of, they could be last-second things. You know, they could be last-second things, but if you take those last-second things and think about them after the fact and then reintegrate them a little later and then reintegrate them, it's something. You know, it's like the idea of the reoccurring enemy. People just, okay, we're going to play, we're going to beat the bad guy, and he's going to go away forever. Really? What kind of story is that? You know, it's how minor was that bad guy to go away forever? If that bad guy can go away forever,
Daddy,
if you can come up
Daddy,
and
I'm not next to the
and like
screen.
just destroy it, then what was driving that bad guy? Why was that bad guy, that villain, that force such an issue? What drives that guy? You know, and just even leaving the question open for that is it's important. You know, that sense of mystery and leaving something to be discovered and then having something that can be discovered if only the questions were ever asked, I think would add to that sense of scope and, you know, the little things that we can do to achieve that. What the?
I'd have to agree. I mean, you gotta put little things in here and there to pique people's interest, to make them think, okay, what's over here, what's over there, what's driving this, what's driving that, and if you're not doing that, you're running a railroad. But
Hell, you know what?
Yeah.
Even the railroads have turn-off points. You know what I'm saying? Where tracks split and come together, and even railroads web out. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but not as often.
It's like Star Wars, right? Great point of intrigue, great point of interest. Something that I like to touch on secretly in a lot of my games that I use in the background. Nobody ever asks questions. It is what it is. But Darth Maul, right? Not a lot of fans may know that Darth Maul didn't die. That Darth Maul basically came back. He took over all the crime syndicates. He was the Mandalore. He had his, quote unquote brother Savage, and he was actually tracked down by Palpatine himself. And Savage was killed in a saber duel with Palpatine, and Palpatine simply let Maul live after that, and he disappeared into obscurity. Now, Darth Maul is an amazing character. Knowing that Darth Maul went and actually led took the leadership of the Black Suns, of the Heart Cartels, became the Mandal, all of this stuff. He is not only a weapon, but a thinker, a plotter, a schemer. Simply take that character and ask yourself, well, what can someone like that do behind the scenes? And how could that affect the game I'm running today?
Most definitely, yes. Maul's a perfect example. But onto another note is the factor that we're coming up on my time limit for tonight, and I would love to continue the discussion of intrigue as part of the next GM's chat, along with plenty of other subjects, and hopefully I can get the three of you back. Nathan, I'm sure you'll be back. You haven't missed one yet. But hopefully I'll get the two of you back, and maybe Andre and a couple of others this time. I know there was quite a few people who at the event or on the event page had said they wanted to go, but nobody responded to who's actually wanting to participate, not just go and watch. Hopefully we can get a few more people next time. It seems like each time we're getting more and more people involved, so hopefully next month, here in a couple of weeks, we'll get some more people into it. But I think that's all for tonight. It's been a pleasure talking with you guys, and to our couple of viewers who have been in and out, and our one who I think has been our mainstay viewer for the night. Thanks a lot for watching. Anybody who watches this later, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoy. Leave some comments. Tell us what you thought we discussed, if it was in your mind correct, if we're full of shit. I enjoy reading comments. If you liked what you've seen, hit the like button, and we'll continue to do more. Thanks a lot for watching, and that's it for tonight, guys.